A very good evening to all pious yogis. I hope you have been practicing the Dharma in conformity with the Dharma. We shall continue to discuss the discourse given to the householder Haliddakani. In the previous Dharma talk, we discussed about one who roams about in a home and one who roams about homeless. This evening, we shall discuss about one who roams about in an abode and one who roams about without abode. So how does one roam about in an abode? In accordance with this discourse, the discourse says that by diffusion and confinement in the abode, consisting in the sign of forms, one is called one who roams about in an abode. The sign of forms are rupa nimitta. So here, the sign of forms is an abode. So there are 6 abodes here. As you know, there are 6 sense objects, but the discourse here use the word sign of forms, rupa nimitta. The second is sign of sounds, sada nimitta. The third is signs of odors, in other words, smell, gandha nimitta. And the fourth, the sign of taste, rasa nimitta. And the fifth is the sign of tactile objects, potappa nimitta. And the sixth, the sign of mental phenomena, dhamma nimitta. So by diffusion and confinement in the abode, consisting in these 6 signs, one is called one who roams about in an abode. So these external sense objects are the sign, nimitta. The word sign, nimitta here, according to this discourse, the sign here is in the sense that it's a condition for defilements to arise. And it's also the abode, or in the sense of a dwelling place. It means the mind may dwell on this object of sense desires. So you may know from your own experience, your personal experience, when you're not mindful of any one of the 6 sense objects, defilements can arise. So here, nimitta is in the sense of condition for defilements to arise. So what's the meaning of a diffusion and confinements? Diffusions means there's an expansion of the mental defilements. Confinements means it becomes a bondage of defilements. For example, if there's a mental object arising, this mental object is about a past incidents that causes defilements to arise, such as anger, aversion. If one did not mindful of that memory, dwell on that thoughts, then the anger, aversions will be growing or getting stronger. Then that defilements is getting stronger, then it becomes called bondage, being bound by that defilements. So that's why one has to be mindful of this contact of the sense door with the sense objects. So here we should rightly understand that there are 3 stages of mental defilements. So the first stage of mental defilements is known as anusaya kilesa. Anusaya kilesa consists of 2 kinds. The first type is known as aramana anusaya. In other words, the defilements that is lying latent in the sense objects. So one who is mindful, you know from their personal experience, if one, for example, merely hearing the voice of an enemy, if one did not mindful, anger will be arising. If one did not hear the voice of that enemy, then anger will not arise. Then the second type of anusaya kilesa is known as santana anusaya kilesa. Santana anusaya kilesa means defilements that have been lying dormant in this what called continuum of the five aggregates since the beginningless of the samsara. So now you may think that my mind is calm, peaceful, without any mental defilements. But if you encounter any sense objects through this sense door, any sense object that is not agreeable to you or agreeable to you, then defilements can arise. If the sense object is not agreeable to you, or it is an unpleasant sense object, then dosa can arise. Dosa means hatred, aversion, ill will, resentment, and so on. So defilements that have been manifested in the mind is known as pariyuttana kilesa. So when pariyuttana kilesa has manifested in the mind, then one might commit unwholesome mental karma. As you know, there are three kinds of karma: kaya karma, vaci karma, and mano karma. And karma can be wholesome and unwholesome, kusala or akusala. So when pariyuttana kilesa has manifested in the mind, then if one did not mindful of it and remove it, then you can become a cause to commit unwholesome mental karma. So it's possible that one will commit, for example, abhijja, or abhijja means covetousness, or vyapada, thoughts of ill will, micchaditthi, wrong will. If one let the mind dwell on these unwholesome thoughts and unwholesome mental karma, then that can become a cause for one to violate morality or to violate the law of the country. In other words, one commits unwholesome body actions and unwholesome verbal actions. So the defilements that cause a person to violate morality, commit evils, violate the law of the country, this defilement is not vitikkamma kilesa. So, as you know, there are three kinds of unwholesome body action: panatipatta, adinadana, kamisu, micchachara. Killing, taking what is not given, and sexual misconduct. Due to the defilements that have manifested the mind and the unwholesome mental actions, one would commit four kinds of unwholesome verbal action: musawada, pisuna vacca, parusa vacca, and sampaparappa. So these four kinds of unwholesome verbal actions or evil speech, in English are telling lies, derisive speech, harsh speech, and the fourth is gossip or idle chatters. So as long as one is awake, this roaming among these six signs will be going on and on. So when one is not mindful, one may not able to realize that defilements is arising gradually. There's a simile given by the well-known Sayadaw, Lady Sayadaw, in his writings. Every defilement has 3 stages. So Anusaya Kilesa, the latent defilements, is like the matchstick in the matchbox. In the olden days, we might use these matches quite often. On one side or both sides of the matchbox, there are these nitrous surface. So if one takes out one matchstick, this matchstick is struck against the nitrous surface of the matchbox, then it will ignite fire on the head of the matchstick. So in other words, there's fire burning at the head of the matchstick. This fire burning at the head of matchstick is like Pariuttana Kilesa. If one is not careful with this fire burning at the head of matchstick, if someone bring this fire at the head of matchstick near paper or any petroleum products or gunpowders, they may cause fire explosions. So you cause great loss due to that fire, such as loss of property, even loss of life. This fire that burns, for example, the house and so on, is like Vitikama Kilesa. So this Anusaya Kilesa is like the nitrous head of the matchstick. A matchbox contains many matchsticks. So is there any danger in this matchbox that contains a lot of matchstick? There's no danger. Even you bring this matchbox near some inflammable articles, there's no danger that will cause fire. So if one takes out one matchstick, and this matchstick is struck against the nitrous surface of the matchbox, then you will ignite fire. So there is a potential danger. So if one is not careful with this fire at the head of the matchstick, then it may cause a fire, great fires that could burn down the house and so on. So the nitrous surface of the matchbox is like the 6th sense object or the 6 signs in this discourse. That's why it's important to practice mindfulness. As long as one is not mindful, defilements can be arising. If one is not mindful of that defilements can become a cause to commit evils. So Anusaya Kilesa is translated as a latent defilements or defilements that are lying dormant in the mind. But Anusaya Kilesa also means potential to commit evil. So everyone should realize that as long as one is not enlightened, one is still a worldling Putujana, then one does have this potential to do evil or to commit evil. So that's why we have to undertake the threefold trainings when we become a disciples of the Buddha Dhamma Sangha. As you know, the threefold trainings are Adi Sila, Adi Citta, and Adi Panya. Because they are training in higher morality, training in higher concentration of mind, and training in higher wisdoms. So, how does one overcome Vitikama Kilesa? One has to observe, for example, the 5 moral precepts firmly. If one is firm in the purifications of morality, then one will be able to abstain or to restrain oneself from violations of moral precepts. But observance of morality, that observance is not able to remove the defilements that have been manifested in the mind, Pariuttana Kilesa. That's why it's important to take up mental training. One could remove Pariyuttana Kilesa, for example, by the practice of concentration or by being mindful of the defilements that have manifested in the mind. For example, when there's manifestation of anger or hatred in the mind, one could practice loving kindness in order to overcome that anger or hatred. If one has been practicing loving kindness very well, and the thoughts of loving kindness is very strong, with the arising of the thoughts of loving kindness, anger or hatred will be gone immediately. But that defilements, anger, hatred, did not disappear permanently. This defilement merely return to the stage of latent or becomes dormant again. When there is a condition, the defilements such as anger, hatred can arise again. But one also can practice mindfulness on the defilements that have manifested in the mind. For example, sometimes the anger or hatred caused by the memories. Sometimes meditators carry away by the memories for a long time, and then the mind also dwell on thoughts of ill will or anger. Meditators must be mindful of that mental defilements. For example, if the meditators perceive it as anger, then they mindful and note anger. If they perceive it as hatred, then they should mindful and note it as hatred. If meditators, while mindful and note the anger, but they still pay attention to that memories, the contents of the memories or that story that causes the anger or hatred to arise, then the anger, hatred will not go away, will not disappear. So meditators should be very mindful of that mental defilements, anger or hatred. They should not pay attention to the memories or the contents of the story. So if meditators are able to mindful and note anger or hatred, they will realize that mental defilements, anger or hatred are also subject to the nature of impermanence. Then meditators may continue to mindful of the basic object or whatever phenomenon that's arising at that present moment. But when the mindfulness is not strong, then the same memory can arise again. Sometimes when we talk about attachment, the attachment is not only about present feeling, present memory. Actually, this attachment also will attach or cling to painful memory and so on. If there's no attachment, then the mind will not remember or think about this painful memory and so on. Sometimes meditators have to mindful of the memories. The mind always go back to the past. Even though sometimes meditators determine not to think about the past or the future, yet the mind will go back to the past. Although we know that the past has gone, yet the mind is not able to detach from the past. But when meditators can mindful, for example, a past memory, either painful memory or present memory, and mindful note it as it really occurs, then meditators are living at that present moment. If meditators are carried away by the memories, then meditators are no longer living at that present moment. So when the same story or the same memories could be arising again and again, defilements such as anger, hatred could be arising again and again, then meditators have to be mindful of them again and again. Mindfulness is a mental process. Mindfulness is a mental state turning towards the phenomenon, or in other words, coming face to face with the phenomenon. But if mindfulness meditators get involved in the process of mindfulness, then they might not be able to see the true nature of the mental states or mental defilements or any phenomena. So when meditators know that there's anger arising, at that time the mindfulness has arisen. Meditators have to follow the mind and be mindful and note, for example, anger, hatred. So it's important to mindful and note the mental defilements, anger, or any mental states until they have disappeared by themselves. If meditators realize that they have the desire to get rid of any mental states or the feeling of dislike towards any mental states, then they must be mindful of that desire or the feeling of dislike towards certain mental states. If meditators are not willing to mindful and note every mental state during the practice of mindfulness, then they are not able to make progress. If meditators are able to mindful and note the mental states, sometimes they have to mindful note certain mental state many times, then the mental states pass away. So when meditators are able to mindful and note the mental state again and again, they are also putting effort to develop the momentum of mindfulness. So by mindful and note constantly from one moment to next moment, meditators are developing the strength of mindfulness. When the momentum of mindfulness is getting stronger, then the mindfulness is also getting stronger. Then meditators will realize that the mental states are not persisting, do not last for a long time. For example, the memory that causes anger or hatred to arise, meditators will realize that when they mindfully note the anger or hatred, that anger or hatred will disappear instantly. So when the mindfulness is sharp, meditators will be able to mindfully note the memory. As soon as the memory that caused the anger to arise, that memory will disappear instantly. So meditators realize that this memory that had been causing anger to arise, now they could mindful and note it instantly, and that memory pass away instantly, and there's no more anger or hatred. Why there's no more anger or hatred arising? So when the mindfulness is attentive, precise, with deep concentration, meditators will realize that that memory is merely a mental process. Mindfulness is another mental process. Both mental processes are nature processes. In other words, both mental processes are subject to arising and passing away. There is no I or person or yogi behind these two processes. That means one is an object, the other is the process of mindfulness or the noting mind. Is it possible to cling or attach to a conditioned phenomenon which is arising and passing away instantly? So it's not possible to cling to something that has the nature of arising and passing away. It is also not possible for other defilements to arise when mindfulness meditators are able to realize the instant arising and passing away of every phenomenon. This way of overcoming defilements is known as Tatanga Pahana. In other words, one overcome the defilements by insight knowledge. Insight knowledge that realizes anicca, dukkha, and anatta. So this Tathanga Pahana helps to overcome pariyuttana kilesa. But as long as one has not yet realized the supramundane knowledge, one is not able to uproot anusaya kilesa. So one should put forth effort so that one can make progress in the various stages of insight knowledge. Tathanga Pahana is translated as partial remover in this case. In other words, when meditators got mindful, for example, the example given just now, the memory that causes anger, hatred to arise, when meditators got mindful of the anger and memory again and again, eventually anger will not arise again when that memory has arisen. If the meditators purposely think back of that memory that caused the arising of anger or hatred in the past, if they purposely think back of that memory, the anger or hatred due to that memory will not arise again. This is because meditators have realized through their personal experience that the memory is not an everlasting mental process, that memory is subject to instant arising and passing away. If mindfulness meditators can bring the practice mindfulness in their daily life, then they could overcome defilements caused by aramana anusaya kilesa. Thus, meditators are not only practicing mindfulness meditation or developing mindfulness during the retreats. They must be able to carry forward their practice of mindfulness into the daily life outside the retreats. Mindfulness can be practiced all the time at any places. Mindfulness is the nature of the mind. In other words, mindfulness is the attention of mind at that present moment. So as long as one is awake, then it's possible to be mindful or to pay attention to one's own body actions or mental actions. If one is able to bring the practice mindfulness into daily life, then the mindfulness will protect one from the attack of mental defilements. That's why mindfulness is also a mental state, manifested as a guard, guarding the mind from the attack of mental defilements, kilesa. So one who has mindfulness will be able to abstain from evils. When there's mindfulness, mental defilements cannot arise. Mindfulness, sati, is one of the cetasika, is known as beautiful mental factors, sobhana cetasika. Similarly, when one practices mindfulness intensively, then that mindfulness will prevent the defilements from arising. For example, when meditators are able to develop mindfulness constantly, continuously, and the mindfulness at each moment is attentive, precise, and energetic, then the mind will be free from mental hindrances and other defilements. So at that time, meditators will realize the specific characteristics of the mental and physical phenomena clearly. Meditators realize that at each moment there's an object, for example, a process of movements, and then there's a process of mindfulness. Besides these two processes, there's nothing else. So that experience overcome ditthi, the view of self. If mindfulness meditators are not able to put forth effort to sustain it, then their experience also subject to disappearance. So if meditators are able to sustain the effort and the mindfulness is getting stronger, meditators will realize that the awareness is always arising dependence on an object. During the practice of walking meditation and mindfulness abilities, meditators will realize that the intention is a mental process and it is a natural process. There is no I or person or meditators behind that mental process of intention or wanting. With the arising of an intention, then a process of movements will be taking place instantly. At the time, meditators will not perceive the form. For example, the leg is moving. Meditators only realize there's a process movements taking place immediately. Meditators will not perceive that my heel is moving upwards and so on. If meditators can see the cause and effect between awareness or the noting mind and the objects, any objects, then they can only realize anicca, dukkha, anatta correctly. Sometimes mindfulness meditators can only realize the arising and passing away of the object, such as the movements of the rising, falling during sitting meditations, or the movements of lifting, pushing, dropping during walking meditations. Sometimes meditators can realize a series of the broken processes of the movements, but they may not be able to realize the arising and passing away of the mindfulness with every broken process of movements. When meditators could realize anicca, dukkha, anatta clearly, that realizations through personal experience overcome three kinds of papancha, three kinds of obsessions, tanha, mana, and ditthi, craving, conceit, and wrong view. So that way of overcoming three kinds of papancha by insight knowledge is also known as tathanga bahana. This tathanga bahana will pave the way to the attainment of samucceda bahana. Samucceda bahana means abandonment of mental defilements by path knowledge, magga-yana. In other words, samucceda bahana uproots anusaya kilesa. So if meditators are able to attain all the four stages of path knowledge, then all kinds of anusaya kilesa will be uprooted totally. So if anusaya kilesa are uprooted, then there is no more diffusions and confinement in the abode consisting in these six signs: sign of form, sign of sound, signs of odors, the sign of taste, the sign of tactile objects, and the sign of mental phenomena. So this discourse also explains to the householder how does one roam about without abode. Here, the diffusions and confinement in the abode consisting in these six signs have been abandoned by the Tathagata, cut off at the roots, make like palm stump, obliterated so that they are no more subject to future arising. Therefore, the Tathagata is called one who roams about without abode. So here, the Tathagata is given as an example, but all Arahants are also roaming without an abode, roaming homeless. But Tathagata is mentioned in this discourse because Tathagata is a supreme example, because his status as a Buddha and Arahant is most evident to all in the world. So the 5 aggregates are known as home, oka, but the 6 sense objects are known as an abode, niketa in Pali. Home or abode is a place of residence. But which one do you have stronger clinging? Home. That's why, according to commentary, the desire and lust are strong in relation to the internal 5 aggregates. That's why they are called home. Home is a permanent dwelling place. One is staying with a beautiful wife, children, wealth, all kinds of possessions. So definitely they have strong lust towards them. So similarly, the desire, chanda and lust raga are strong in relation to these internal 5 aggregates. That's why they call home. But the 6 external sense objects are known as abode, niketa, because that dwelling place is only temporary. For example, one may go to a shopping complex to enjoy seeing all kinds of visible form, hearing all kinds of music and so on. But they only go there temporarily, then they will return home. So that's why the desire and lust are weaker in relation to these 6 sense objects. So they are called an abode. But anyway, our aim of practicing Satipatthana Vipassana Bhavana, developing the Noble Eightfold Path, so that we want to achieve the ultimate aim, that's roaming homeless, roaming without an abode. In that way, one shall not be born again. That's why the 5 aggregates or the 6 sense bases are the object of mindfulness meditations, are the phenomena to cultivate wisdoms. So I wish all mindfulness meditators always heed full the teaching, undertake the practice of mindfulness meditation diligently, so that eventually you shall roaming about homeless without abode and experience the ultimate bliss in this very life.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.